Следно, имаме чест, односно имам чест да го поканам професор Jorij Abraham, кој што е извршен директор на Ecommerce Foundation и исто така schemadvisor.com. Тој ќе ни збори за влијанието на COVID-19 врз трговијата и што понатам. Затоа останете покрај нас, продолжуваме со професорот Jorij Abraham за некоја минутка.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Very good. Thank you very much for having me, Jorij.
So, are you in your office, or this much boost you have at home?
As many people, I'm at home, but very honestly, these books are all my wife's. So.
Oh my God. Oh my God. I don't know what to say. Poor you. So much reading. Yeah. So, how do you feel about this year's conference? Is this your first time here?
Yes, but I've been in contact with the Macedonian E-commerce Association for a long time, and it's incredible how much Nina and her team is realizing. So I'm very honored to be here and very happy.
Yeah, the honor is all ours. So your topic is the COVID-19 over the e-commerce and what's next. So you have your screen time. Please enjoy it.
Thank you very much. I see a lot of flickering. I hope the things are okay on your side.
Well, actually, I have the flickering here. But it's okay now. Yes.
Okay. Good.
Yes, it's fine. Great.
Okay. Thank you very much, and again, thank you very much for having me. As Jorij was already saying, my name is Jorij Abraham. I can only do one thing: e-commerce. I've been e-commerce manager for a large department store chain in the Netherlands, for TUI Travel, for Sanoma publishers, and before I started at the Ecommerce Foundation, I've been director of research at both the Dutch E-commerce Association as well as the European E-commerce Association. Maybe a little bit about what is the E-commerce Foundation. Our mission is to foster global digital trade. And the idea behind it is that the more we trade, hopefully the less we will fight. And in our own very small way, we hope to contribute to a better world. We do that in several different ways. We publish about 20 reports annually on how e-commerce is developing in more than 50 countries. We have an online community called ecommercewiki.org, where about now 40,000 e-commerce professionals share knowledge and insights. We have a trust seal called safe.shop, and we have ScamAdvisor. And ScamAdvisor is an online algorithm to identify, or actually to determine the chance of a website being either legit or a scam. So please feel free to check your website on ScamAdvisor, and if we're wrong with our algorithm, just email us. We are happy to fix it. I've been asked to tell about the future of shopping and e-commerce, and of course you cannot do that without looking at the coronavirus. It started rather innocent in February, March, April, but it grew into something I think nobody of us could have foreseen or predicted. And it's hitting us hard, and it will not be gone for at least half a year and probably longer. As Nina was already saying in her presentation, e-commerce actually had a positive effect on the e-commerce market. Globally, we predict that the total e-commerce market will grow somewhere between 40 and 50% this year. And the peak has been fantastic. But you see that the different product categories are influenced differently. I regret very much that I did not buy shares in Disney Plus last year when they launched Disney Plus, the online movie service, because I don't think Disney would have predicted that they would have more than 50 million paying members in half a year time. Same with do-it-yourself, hardware, sporting goods, all sectors which grew phenomenally over the last few months, thanks to Corona. What we do see is that the growth figures differ very strongly per country. And I have to say, this is a graph from May 2020, so the reality already looks a lot different. But many countries reported a massive growth in e-commerce, but some countries actually reported a decline or even a freeze, because in some countries it was not only the physical stores were ordered to close by the governments, but also online delivery was no longer allowed. And that hits some countries like India, Brazil very hard. Of course, in many countries, online delivery is now allowed, but you still see differences in growth per month or even per day, depending on the local restrictions, the local opening ups. So it's a very, very dynamic market at the moment. What I would like to do with you is briefly discuss, okay, what are the short-term and long-term impact of Corona on the global e-commerce market. And I first would like to zoom in on the short term. And I really have to laugh. In some countries, you really see awakening. In the Netherlands, e-commerce has already been big, but in Belgium, for example, retailers were lagging behind a little bit. And what you now see that retailers in Belgium are really picking up very quickly and really embraced e-commerce and have started to sell online. But it also has its challenges, and I see three short-term impacts of Corona. One is higher cost, two is logistical challenges, and three is a hopefully short-term market decline. Let me zoom briefly in on each of these trends. First, additional costs, and I think each of you who runs a company has been faced with the cost of hygiene, of tests, of people reporting sick, not being able to work. Amazon is, I think, one of the biggest spenders, because they're also huge. But they estimate that they spent about $800 million this year on Corona measures. They test about 50,000 people every day on Corona, because they want to prevent that entire warehouses have to shut down. And they're doing a pretty good job. We also see a rise in logistical and warehousing costs. Warehousing costs were already in September at the level of the peak of December. And we do not see a decline there. And especially in air freight, demand has increased and will increase further once the vaccine comes on the market, because it has to be transported cold. Most transports will be done via plane, and but on the other hand, passenger flights are down with 80%. And what I myself was not aware of is that most of the good transports is actually done on passenger planes. And as there are no passenger planes, supply has dropped significantly while demand increased, and then you know what happens. Shipping by airlines is going through the roof. And I don't see a short-term decline there. It will continue into 2021. And finally, work productivity. There has been done a study where they determined that work productivity actually increased with 13%. However, 9% of that 13% increase is simply based because we don't have to travel. We spend more time behind our computers working. So we're only 4% more effective. And what I'm a little bit afraid of, and I'm starting to get the first signals in on that, is that yes, work productivity increased on the very short term, but on the midterm, we are social animals. And I fear that because we are working, we make less good decisions, we miss the team building, and it might be that Corona will be hurting our work productivity on the medium term. And I love to hear your opinion. Finally, regarding logistics, I see a delivery crisis. I'm already getting in reports of several e-commerce shops who do not get their goods delivered from China because of the shortage in air freight. But also local postal services are already struggling with the current volume. And well, Friday is Black Friday. I've seen several e-commerce associations in Europe and also several retailers pushing very hard to get consumers to order now for Christmas and not to wait until 2 days before Christmas. And I really recommend that also for you in your communication to us customers. Try to convince them, if you want to have your package in time, order now, and try to spread the order peak across as many days as possible. Still, we will have logistical problems, and I think for the e-commerce industry as a whole, it's very important to manage the expectations of consumers that yes, it's underway, but it's stuck at the moment. Another short-term effect is that, of course, Corona is hitting the economy very, very hard. And we see that in many industries, especially, of course, travel and tourism, the decline has been sharp. So my expectation is that next year, people are getting unemployed despite measures from government, and they will spend less. And that will also impact the e-commerce industry. I mean, it has been a booming market now, but overall spending will decrease, and as a result, also some e-commerce industries will feel the grunt, like already the case in fashion. The expectation of the World Economic Forum is that in 2019, GDP overall will drop with 4.9%. And as we're now deep into our second wave, and depending on the country, already in the third wave, or the first wave never ended, it will continue towards 2021. And personally, I think the expectation that the economy, the global economy, will grow again with 5.4% in 2021 is rather optimistic for two reasons. One, the coronavirus will take longer to stabilize and get under control than we predicted. Secondly, this is the first really global economic crisis. I mean, we have had economic crisis before in 1929, in the 70s, in the 80s, in 2008, 2009. But these were always economic crises which impacted one region of the world particularly. So if the North America was in an economic crisis, it went actually pretty well in Asia and Europe, and we were able to pull the USA out of its crisis. And the same in Europe, when we were in an economic crisis, then China was pulling us out. Hopefully China will pull us out this year because they are suffering the least at the moment of the coronavirus as one of the biggest economies. But still, I think the economic impact will be much more serious than currently predicted. And I think a growth of 5.4% is actually wishful thinking. So these are the short-term effects for 2020, 2021. What do we expect on the long term? Again, I see three trends. I believe that the e-commerce market will continue to grow, that consumers are really changing their behavior, that it's not a temporary thing. And we see a trend called regional platformization. I will get into that later on. First, about the e-commerce market. The good message is e-commerce will continue to grow. And in an interview done by the United Nations and the Swiss E-commerce Association, consumers from several countries were interviewed. And most expect that they will continue to buy more in online stores than offline. At least, I mean, they will continue their current increase in online shopping. Surprisingly, in Switzerland and Brazil, that's less of the case. But the overall, the general statistic is that consumers have learned to shop online. Their experience with it was actually good. Okay, there were delays in delivery, but they got their packages. So my prediction here is that the e-commerce market will continue to boom for several years in the future. There's another factor driving this growth, and that is that physical retail is being hit hard. And as Nina already said in her presentation, COVID is accelerating several trends we have been seeing for years. And we have seen for years that physical retail is in trouble because of the prices they offer, which are often higher than in online, the service, which is not so good as it should be, and building a experience is actually quite expensive and quite difficult to do. So we see a lot of stores already closing down, accelerated by Corona, but also Microsoft, for example, is really permanently closing its retail stores. It has said goodbye to its omni-channel presence. And my prediction there is that this trend will accelerate further into 2021, because online stores cannot, stores cannot offer a good experience. They, well, as the sign already says, please enter the building quickly, do your shopping and get out, and don't take anybody with you. That's not a good experience. And as stores in a shopping street or shopping mall are closing down, the entire shopping street is becoming less interesting. The mall is becoming less interesting for consumers to visit at all. And that has a self-reinforcing effect. And we already see that in shopping street in smaller cities and on the outskirts of large cities. They are suffering the most because their entire shopping district is becoming less and less interesting for consumers to visit. We also see a change in consumer, and I really recommend, please keep an eye on Google Trends, because they have some lovely data where you can see what things are changing. I mean, the rise in streaming TV was, of course, obvious, but also new services like online therapy, coffee, quarantine dating. I still don't know how they do that, quarantine dating, but it must be interesting. And we've seen a sharp rise in categories we used to not buy online. Food is a great example. I mean, food has been rather modest in most countries, online ordering, but Corona increased it with 500 or 600%, depending on the country. But we now see consumers also buying products which at least I would never have predicted before. I mean, we see consumers starting to buy cars online without having driven in them. We see them even buying houses online. The virtual tours consumers can now do through houses are really great. So we see that e-commerce is not only growing in the industries in which it was already big, but it's also entering industries where at least I did not expect e-commerce to gain significant foothold. And finally, of course, digital services. And I think, very honestly, this is also a great chance for Macedonia, because digital services are on the rise, and they're actually often quite cheap to produce. We have seen a rise in gaming and entertainment. We see it in social, in health, in training. And my expectation is that the number of services will increase very, very rapidly, as people are still looking for solutions now that face-to-face is becoming more difficult. I want to give you an example, and I hope the video will work.
Okay, bye. Or not. 1, 2, 3, 4. Come on and play some more. 1, 2, 3, 4. Come on and play some more. 1, 2, 3, 4. Come on and play some more.
So this is Facebook's vision on virtual reality, and it's live, so you can check it out. And I think that's also one of the factors or influences Corona has. It's accelerating developments like virtual reality, like the use of robots, like the application of artificial intelligence. Things are speeding up even more than we thought possible. My last long-term trend is related to marketplaces and regionalization. And Nina was already saying in her presentation, consumers get scammed. And we've seen a massive shift from offline crime to online crime. Also on scamadvisor.com, which we host, we saw a 40% increase in traffic. And this year we published our first State of Global Scam report. And we researched more than 31 countries. And we estimate that last year, 36 billion euros was lost in online scams, meaning web shops not delivering goods, delivering fakes, etc. And countries are reporting a massive increase in this. The Dutch police yesterday just published a press release stating a growth of 40%. And that's over most of the countries. Only Sweden and Italy last year reported a small decline. And you see now that online scams make up, depending on the country, around 20 to 30% of all reported scams. So scams are really becoming big. And that's actually driving consumers to marketplaces. And in my personal opinion, I love marketplaces, but the concentration of power is very honestly getting very, very scary. Amazon grew with 40% in the first half year of 2020, and Facebook with Facebook Shop is expected to also sell about 200 billion via its platform. And that's a factor we have to include in our long-term strategies. We have to embrace these marketplaces, these social media platforms, but we also have to make sure that we do not grow fully dependent on them, because they can only change one little thing and you're out of business. Apart from the Amazonization, the platformization of the e-commerce markets, I see another trend, and that is, I mean, as you all know, we have in the West, in America, we have Google, Facebook, and Amazon running the show, and also in a large part of Western Europe. And in the East, we have Alibaba, WeChat, Tencent, who are dominating the Asian markets. And currently, Amazon and Alibaba are fighting it out in India. I'm very curious what is going to happen in Europe. I mean, more and more legislation is built to keep these tech giants under control and make sure that they don't become monopolies. My hope is that more and more national and local marketplaces will develop to counter the current trend, but also make it possible for merchants to keep trading in a good environment. And I think one of the triggers for the European Parliament was the fact that we discovered during Corona that 80% of our medicines are actually produced in China and India. And that makes us too dependent. For the record, I'm very much in favor of a global e-commerce, but it has, of course, to be also benefit all the regions as well. So how can you, as an online store, survive and thrive? As Nina was already saying, I mean, never waste a good crisis, and I think many companies are doing that. Just a few fun examples. I mean, this is a supermarket in the Netherlands, and it's fake for the record. But the idea I really liked is, why don't give everybody? It's mandatory to wear a mouth cap in supermarkets now. Why don't we put on that the barcode of the loyalty card, so people don't have to get the loyalty card? You can just scan the mouth mask. I mean, it's a fun, and it went viral quite well here in the Netherlands. I really was amazed with how entrepreneurial some companies are. Bavaria is a well-known beer. But they were able to switch production from beer to hand sanitizers within weeks, and hand sanitizers were, of course, very strongly in demand. And they actually took back the beer from the restaurants and bars and cooked it again to make it into hand sanitizer. And it even had a nice beer smell to it. And Decathlon, for example, a sport retailer, set up an online community to get people to keep working on their condition, on their body, while working from home. And of course, they also benefited because, yeah, if you're sporting anyway, then why not also buy your sporting goods at Decathlon? Another example of an entrepreneur who really picked up things very quickly is Bloompost. They patented a product allowing them to deliver flowers in a very small package, allowing it to go through the front door while still staying fresh. And they're now expanding very rapidly to Sweden, Denmark, and other Western European countries. So what can you do? And my recommendation is to really develop a long-term strategy. And one of the tools I often use together with companies is called scenario planning. And scenario planning is based on identifying future trends, which are not linear, not predictable. And actually, I did this exercise with a delivery company in November last year. And one of them predicted a pandemic, and we had to laugh. But in the end, he proved to be true. So how scenario planning is used, and it's used by large companies like Shell and Unilever, but you can use it as well, is to define trends which are unpredictable. So this is an example we created in April for a company. Okay, will we open the will the borders be remain open, or will they close? And will we get the pandemic under control or not? And based on these scenarios, we developed actions for each scenario because we did not know which scenario was becoming true. And it allowed the company actually to prosper and become much more flexible. So my recommendation is also to you, okay, look at what are the possible scenarios for the next few years, and which actions do I have to undertake to make sure that in each of these scenarios, independent of which one comes true, we will survive. And please, to keep on the dark side. I mean, one of the key trends we have been ignoring for quite some while, and now with Corona, of course, has less priority, is the climate change. It's going to impact us, and it's also going to change the e-commerce industry. I would like to also end with a positive note. I mean, as Winston Churchill already said, never waste a good crisis. A crisis also comes with change, and change often to the good. I mean, the SARS epidemic of 2002 accelerated internet penetration in China and actually allowed Alibaba and JD.com to foster to grow. And I think it's also, you are now at the tipping point of a big change. E-commerce will grow massively, and I think there are massive opportunities for Macedonia to not only grow in e-commerce, but especially in digital services, and develop these not only for Macedonia, but across the world. And with that, I would like to conclude and wish you very much success with your e-commerce efforts this year, next year, and I do hope we can meet physically again next year at your conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you to you too also for this presentation. It wasn't that hard, right?
The presentation?
Yeah.
No, at least not for me. I hope it was not hard for the audience.
Yeah. It was actually probably easier to actually. It's probably harder to do this type of presentation in times where the presentation is about bad things. Probably so. Thank you for this the peak of the e-commerce and everything in the while the coronavirus was happening. A lot of things you said we already feel on our bare skin. So I wish you good luck again, and thanks for coming. And I hope you see you next year, maybe in person. I don't know.
That will be great. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much. Bye.